Okay, here we go. So hopefully this is the last in this specific series I'm doing about the psychopathy, what's been enabled to allow people who are deeply ashamed of themselves. They have a lot of self-loathing. They feel really afraid. As an individual, they're quite incapable of actually having confidence. So the only way they get confidence is to come together with a gang, like a street gang would. All right, where that's when they can really grow and rise and have that experience of being powerful, but they can't do it alone. And if we stand here and do nothing and sit there in silence because we believe that's the only way we can be safe from other people, right, while we're allowing them to violate us, that in itself is a mental illness, and it's about us maturing past that. So if you're at that point where you can do that, right, and you want to stop these conditions because you understand that you're contributing to them by staying silent, then there's going to be value here. So now I'm going to play something from Larkin where he goes and explains a particular thing that these people are allowed to get away with, and we let that happen by believing that they have some kind of special powers that nobody else has. So here we go.
It only occurred to me fairly recently that you see all these videos of cops shooting people. First of all, there are a lot of them. And there's one down in Florida where there's a guy running away and a cop shoots him in the back. He's unarmed and he's running away and they shoot him in the back. And then there's all the things of, well, he pulled out his wallet and we thought it was a gun. Cops constantly lie under oath about what happened. I mean, I can't even count how many videos I've seen where here is their sworn statement of what happens, and then the video comes out and shows the cop totally lied his ass off. Happens constantly all over the place. But in a lot of these videos that involve cops shooting people, and I only just recently noticed the significance of this, you'll see the guy like standing there, like there's a guy with a knife in Kansas City who was like 15 feet away and staggering around. Obviously he was drugged out of his mind on something, and the cop shoots him. But what usually happens in these videos is one cop takes a shot, and half a second later there's a barrage of shots from all the cops in the area. Now, if you ask me if there's somebody with a knife and somebody just shot him, my first response is not, I'm going to shoot him too. My response is, whoa, he got shot. That should kind of settle the situation out for now, I would think. Or somebody got shot in the back running away, and then a bunch of cops unload their guns into him. And I don't know why it took me so long to notice, this is policy. It is police policy that if your fellow cowardly gang member just shot someone for no good reason, you as a fellow pig are supposed to shoot him too. Doesn't matter if there's justification, doesn't matter if there's a threat. You shoot him too, first of all, so he dies and can't say what actually happened, and second of all, so your fellow pig doesn't get in trouble for doing what none of the people around him did and has to explain why he shot somebody when nobody else did. So they all join in like the cowardly pansies they are and gun down innocent people because they're freaking cowards. Two more.
So we've got our own examples here, guys, in Australia. It was not too long ago in New Zealand, in Queensland, right? They had that orchestrated shooting. You'll see all the time on the news, like constantly, there's some kind of police shooting, they're justifying it, right? This is what we're allowing to happen to ourselves. If we don't change by making it known that what they're doing is in defiance of moral principle, it's in defiance of life, right? How can we allow them to have rights that nobody else does? Right? That is a sickness in its own if we sit there doing nothing. And so here's a perfect example of when we stay silent, what we're giving our consent to. That's the thing, because it's not just what you do, it's what you don't do as well that matters just as much. So it's what you omit. So we're going to move on.
Another 19th century abolitionist, Salmon Chase, states, quote, "Slavery is the complete and absolute subjection of one person to the control and disposal of another person."
What does that sound like to you guys? Does not sound like what happens when the police pull you over and they threaten the hell out of you, and what do they say? It's some kind of act, some legislative thing that gives them the right to do that, right? But you know yourself that there's no one has the right to do that. You'll know it in your body when you're feeling it. So this is what we're allowing all the time, and we're not doing anything about it, and that's why it's continuing. That's how natural law works. It's what you consent to with your silence and what you allow to happen, that's what comes back to you.
By legalized force. we need not argue that no person can be rightfully compelled to submit to such control and disposal. All such subjugation must originate in force, and private force not being strong enough to accomplish the purpose, public force in the form of law must lend its aid.
That says so much there, guys, right? Because I've done stuff about it. If you've looked at the hidden knowledge work that we've done, we talk about law and how it's used and manipulated to change people's perception, to give it the sense that people accept that there's some kind of unchallenged authority as soon as they chuck that word law in there. And so this is really, really articulating, guys. And it's about breaking through that mental prison and then doing something about it. So it's not just knowing, it's also doing. Because without doing, the knowing has no power.
The government comes to the help of the individual slaveholder and punishes resistance to his will and compels submission.
Now, what you think about businesses, how they go about doing things, right? Especially the corporations. Think about what kind of support they get and who they get it from, right? Have a proper think about this. The game is the same. It's never changed. You know, if you've always wondered why there's certain businesses get away with things that you yourself couldn't, there's a relationship here, right? It's very clear once you start paying attention.
The government, therefore, in the case of every individual slave, is the real enslaver, depriving each person enslaved of all liberty and all property and all that makes life dear.
So think about what's coming down the pike, guys, right? What are they doing right now? They're accelerating that whole thing where there's no hiding it, right? The cost of living's out of control. You know, there's the central bank digital currency that's coming, social credit scores, 15-minute cities. You'll be happy owing nothing. It's all in our faces, right? It's always been there. Now they've just accelerated. Now it's up to you whether you care enough to actually stand up and say enough's enough. And we're going to use the correct system that's meant to be in place to hold their feet to the fire, so there's no way they can pretend that they have authority they don't. This is where your power is.
For slavery cannot subsist a moment after the support of the public force has been withdrawn.
So hopefully that's giving you some more insight. We're going to move on to the next one here. Now this is really important, right? So I hear a lot of people say, well, how are we going to be safe without the police? If that was really true, if they were there for our safety, like in experience, then explain this. If the justification for police is community safety, then why is it that instead of feeling safe, most people feel on edge, some kind of anxiety, some kind of nervousness, when they spot a police vehicle nearby or from behind? Think about the amount of times you've ever been driving, you know, and you spotted one around, you change your behavior immediately, or you see one behind you, you start going, oh crap, are they following me for a reason? Are they about to pull me over? I wonder what I've done. What are they going to issue me with? Like, you think about how quickly all that starts happening to you, right? How your internal state changes. You might start feeling a bit hot, a bit clammy, a bit sweaty, heart rate goes up. If they were really there for your safety, you would never have those internal reactions. They just wouldn't happen. So this means that we all know they're violators on some level, right? Because our experience doesn't lie to us. And that's about whether you want that to keep happening or whether you want it to change, where you are actually free and you don't have to live that kind of life of hypervigilance. Because that's the life where most of us are living day to day, because we allow this to happen under the illusion of safety. Okay, I've got another one to play.
During the entirety of the time I interacted with dark occultists, they referred to the police and military only according to these two terms. They called them our dogs and our pets. Nothing else, no other term was ever used. I never heard them say the word police, ever. Ever. They called them our dogs. And for a long time, I had no idea what the hell they were talking about. It was like, I'm like, what are these people talking about? Our dogs? What dogs? And then I finally made the connection. Whoa, they're talking about the police. They call the police their dogs. And it's not like, yo dog, you know, you're my boy. It's not street lingo. They're calling them animals that are easily made into obeying their commands because they break their will. And they symbolize this by giving them dog tags in the military. This is a perfect representation of how dark occultists see the police. If I drew that, it could not have been any more perfectly represented. I don't know who did it, but whoever drew that knows exactly how dark occultists think about cops. Exactly. Okay? Because they are the puppet masters and these people are their puppets. The military and the police are in this position. And their ego is so strong and their free will is so destroyed that they look at it as a badge of honor to be in this position. As a badge of honor.
That's the sickness we're working with here because we allow it to happen. So it's just as much on us as it is on them because they're not going to change, like I said, while everything stays the same. There has to be a change in conditions and we need to insist on it and remove ourselves from the lie because the whole organization of police is a monolith and it requires us to keep feeding the lie. A monolith cannot exist as it is in nature because there's no such thing as a monolith in nature. It needs to be a construct. And the only way to remove it is to take it away one brick at a time. And that's each individual starting to take responsibility for how they've been mentally enslaved and wishing to move past that mental enslavement. And then calling out the lie. And once enough people call out that lie, that entire monolith will collapse on its own weight because all the foundational pillars have been removed. It's really easy once people start understanding it. And that's what's required, guys. So here's some more info as to what you're really allowing to happen if you say nothing and do nothing.
Now, when you're doing something like that in dark occultism, you know you really have something strong going. Okay? Not only that, these people who the police attack dogs and military attack dogs are oppressing, look at that position as being some kind of a badge of honor.
You see that, guys? The sheer act of oppressing another living sentient being, they carry that as a badge of honor. That's the sickness that we are giving authority to by saying nothing. There is a correct system where anything remotely, where there is something to do with peacekeeping, right, that comes under the authority of the people. And any step out of line, they are immediately prosecuted, no different to you and I. There is a system in place, and we're going to move into that soon.
And think it's honorable and virtuous. You're members of a cult. Police and military and those who are supporting them, you are cult members. It doesn't matter whether you don't believe it. It doesn't matter whether you don't think it's true. It doesn't matter whether you can't accept that because your ego is in the way. These are the people who own you. And they think they're legitimate in that ownership. I attended a ritual on Walpurgisnacht, 1997, in Whitehall, Maryland, just south of the Pennsylvania border. And it was in what you might call a mansion or a McMansion, not a high-end mansion, but, very, very rich neighborhood, let's put it that way. And after the ritual, there was a gathering in one of the rooms near the front of the house, and there was some refreshments served. And I was talking to a gentleman who looked something like this guy here. And this isn't an exact accurate rendition. A listener to my radio show and podcast drew this for me from a description I made. Technically, this person was outside. So if you look at that as a door there and he was on the other side of the door, it would have been much more accurate. He was guarding the ritual house, a member of the police. And again, Jay told you stories about the police operating in art and basically being aware of murders that were being done in their district and basically saying, better luck in the next life, kid. We know who's running this place. They're our bosses. They sign our paychecks. So you're shit out of luck.
That's what, if you looked at the first video I showed you, that guy, the one who's, positioning himself as some kind of leader of a Christian, moral, Western, liberal democracy, right? That's who he said are moral men. The same people. Now, just so we can go back and reflect on it, it'll be 2 videos ago. Go watch it, see what he said, and then this is the actual reality of what he's calling moral.
They got a police officer to actually guard the ritual house on this high holiday of the satanic year. Technically, he would have been on the other side of a closed door here, but it was a glass door. So you could, well, it wasn't a glass door. There was a big window there, and the door was closed and locked. And he was on the outside of it on like a patio. But you could see him through the door. And while I might have been standing like, over here in front of this guy, he's absolutely laughing about how these people who we consider lower than trash are guarding us in our homes while we perform the rituals that we perform. And here's what his laugh sounded like. Almost identical. The choking or gagging aspect was even more like heightened because he was like eating while he was laughing. He was eating and drinking while he was laughing, like food in his mouth, okay? Like a gluttonous slob. And I'm telling you, that cackle or that force, like you can't even draw, you're laughing so hard you can barely draw another breath in. That's what it sounded like, okay? This is what these people think of the police. And you know what? Can't say I blame them. I think about them the same way. They're that big of a joke. You would enslave your own kind. What bigger kind of a joke is there? What kind of lower form of life is there than that? You deserve to be laughed at like that.
So there you have it, guys. Their very own slave masters find them an absolute disgrace. And this is the level of denseness that we're dealing with. And they're not going to do it for themselves, guys. It's up to us. You have the information. It's in front of you. Do you care enough to make something of it? Do you want to be the change, right, that you say you want? It requires you to take action. That's the way the laws of nature work. Nothing happens by you sitting doing nothing. But you doing something, there's always some change. But you need to know what's actually going to get you what it is you seek, right? And so there is a correct system in place that we were supposed to have, and this country here in Australia was meant to be running under. And it's about understanding that and then asserting that, and how to get all those criminals who pretend that they're actually acting in service to stand in front of us, and we decide what the consequences to them for violating our rights is, right? There is an actual structure that can be proven. There's a ton of evidence out there. It just requires everyone to get around it, and support it. So it's waiting for you to pick up and use. Everyone keeps saying, what's your solution? It's not my solution. It's just there. It's easy for you to find. And if you're of that mind to go look for it, it's available. I'm just going to point to what you can do right now. It's from the same site where you can get a lot of information. Alright, here it is, guys. If you're serious about taking action and adding your weight to influencing the course of freedom, it's a real easy one for you to do. All the work's been done for you. It's really simple. Just go to the Magna Carta 1215 site, click on News and Articles. This one will be at the top. It's police call to action, police letter campaign. Then you just follow down, and you'll see it's got it all explained, what it's all about. There's a 12-point letter. There's even a video here for you about how to create what's called Royal Mail. So there's a higher likelihood it gets delivered, and you can track it. Right, so you've got evidence it's been delivered. Here it says this flyer has a secondary function that is even more powerful. It can be hand-delivered to the mailbox of any police officers you know. Just sit with that impact for a moment. And here is the actual cover letter that goes with it. There's no name required on this, right? It's just download, print, and here's the actual one to download. That's the actual 12 points, which is right here. There's an image of it. So I'm only going to read you a few points here about what's on it. Question and information for police officers. Are you aware that much of your daily shift is spent in criminal activity or supporting the criminal activity of others? Do you understand what the implications of this will be on your personal and family life when it becomes known to the general public, as it will? Are you aware of the extreme seriousness of betraying daily the sanctity of your constable's oath? Everything hinges on this, guys, the constable's oath, right? This is where they can't hide no matter what they try. This is the linchpin that takes the whole system down, and we are letting them know that we understand it and that we're coming after them for it. That's where they panic, guys. And if every single station across the country gets one of these, they're going to be in sheer panic. And the best part is, like I said, it's totally anonymous. If you're afraid that you're going to have some kind of retribution, there's no way it can be done, right? Because no one's name's on this, right? And if they're getting nailed with this, it's just coming piled in. This is when it gets huge, right? Are you aware that such betrayal is classified as high treason under the law you are sworn to uphold, which is the constitution for the entire British Commonwealth, and carries the most severe penalties under the law? Do you realise that your constable's oath means your role is delegated to you by the monarch to protect individual rights? That's the true nature of why we even created police constables. From all who seek to violate them, including the legislative branch of government, as the monarch is duty-bound by oath to defend people's individual right to self-determination from parliamentary tyranny. That's the role of the monarch. And that's who the police are supposed to take allegiance to, because it says Our Lady the Queen, or Sovereign Lady the Queen, or Sovereign the King, or something like that. It says some version of that. That means that they are subordinate to the monarch's constitutional coronation oath. And their coronation oath swears to uphold individual rights. And one of those ways it does it is to prevent any kind of governmental tyranny. It's critical. This is about understanding this, like backwards and forwards. Are you aware that your oath of office is the thin blue line that separates lawful criminal behaviour, and that without your oath, adherence to your oath, you no longer police by consent? That's critical, guys, because they come and say that out loud. Alright, so there's really good stuff in here. It goes after them and lets them know about what just doing their job and what's going to be for their family, because the income and assets they've acquired through their actions will eventually be classified as proceeds of crime, which will be confiscated from their surviving family members. So what's the impact on their family going to be like? That's when you're really getting into the back of their minds, guys, where they cannot stop thinking about this. That's the beauty of this. So if you're serious about affecting your freedom, these guys are the ones who are standing in the way. They are what's called the house slaves, right? They come from the people, but they're willing to work against the very people they come from just to get a few extra comforts and move out of the field into the house of their masters, and be their lapdogs. That's what these people are, and this is what we're letting them know is coming from them for what they did to their very own people that have trusted them to protect them. Okay, guys, that's all I've got to offer on that one. So there's 3 videos I've done in a row on it. Hopefully you've got some kind of courage behind you now. It's a very simple process. You'll also learn a lot just by reading it, the true nature of what's supposed to be in play that they can't hide from, right? And that's when they start to panic. And it's about whether you care enough to go action it, put it out there, and put your weight behind the truth.